Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this session where I will be sharing with you a foundational understanding of Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, also commonly known as HIPAA. So we will gain a general understanding of what this act means, what this compliance means, who needs to comply with it, and discuss the overall essence of the act. So here is the agenda. We will understand what HIPAA is in very simple terms, not the technical definition terms, but in very simple terms, we will understand what HIPAA is, what is PHI, which is an acronym for Protected Health Information, and examining the identifiers that classify the information as PHI. We will also take a look at the HIPAA regulation overview, what the Act says, what rules, what security requirements it has for the organization, and then who is obligated to comply with HIPAA, which organizations or business associates or individuals are obligated to comply with HIPAA. We will understand that. Then we will delve a little deeper into the mechanisms of how HIPAA is implemented within an organization and discuss about HIPAA 1, which is a compliance management software. It is one of the compliance management software. There are many, but we will discuss specifically what these softwares do, not specifically what HIPAA 1 is about, but rather through this software example, I will give you a general understanding of what this software is used for, how it can help an organization to become compliant with HIPAA. Before then we conclude, we will delve into some of the assessment questions that are posed by this compliance management software and how the internal projects within an organization, when they have HIPAA, when they have PHI involvement, when they're processing PHI, then what kind of security assessment questions they have to fill out. So we will discuss that as well. What is HIPAA in simple terms? It is a US based law that is designed to help the medical information of US citizens private and safe. This law is only applicable to the data of US citizens and doesn't extend to the citizens of any other country. So the main goal of HIPAA is to guard the medical records and other sensitive health information of US citizens. How does it accomplish this? By identifying certain pieces of information about a person as protected health information or PHI, or also known as personal health information. So HIPAA specifically lists 18 types of information that are unique to an individual as PHI. So I'm displaying some examples on the screen now, like names, phone numbers, fax numbers, email addresses, and biometric scans. These are all specific to one person, and organizations need to protect them. By clearly defining these elements, HIPAA is helping organizations to know exactly what information they need to safeguard. This precise categorization of information of data into personal health information into PHI is how HIPAA fulfills its mission to protect individuals' medical records and personal health information. So now that we know what data falls under PHI and needs protection, let's explore what the regulation advises on safeguarding this data. So HIPAA outlines its security and privacy requirements for protecting medical information through these three foundational rules. Much like the triage in cybersecurity, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability triage, in the same way, HIPAA has these three rules which together kind of form a triage and helps HIPAA to distinctly lay out the security requirements that it wants the organizations to put into place to safeguard the medical information of US citizens. Starting with the security rules, the security rule has these three types of safeguards. One is the administrative safeguard. Administrative safeguards are basically the rules, the policies, and the procedures that an organization puts in place to make sure everyone is following the law and keeping the patient information safe. It includes like conducting security awareness trainings for the employees on privacy policies, on HIPAA compliance regulations, and having a designated person who, like a privacy officer, who makes sure that all the rules are being followed within the organization. Physical safeguards are about controlling physical access to protect data. It's about keeping unauthorized users away from systems and facilities, like securing rooms where sensitive information is stored and ensuring proper disposal of information. Technical safeguards are all about using the technology to protect the health information. So it will include using secure technology to make sure that only the right people can access the health information. This could mean using passwords, encryption, and other security measures to protect patient information. So for instance, think about when you log into a computer at work, you need a password, right? And if you're sending information over the internet, it should be encrypted so that only the right person with the right key can read it. So these are the examples of technical safeguards. The privacy rule, it is more about respecting the individual's freedom and right to his medical information. So organizations should keep this in mind. It defines who is allowed to access and receive the patient's information. And for instance, it mandates that patients must be informed on how their data can be used and shared, and gives them the right to access their health records. So this rule is about giving patients control and rights over their health information. Breach notification rule: organizations must notify the Department of HHS, that is Health and Human Services, which deals with HIPAA. It should also inform the individuals who are affected by the breach, and in some cases, the media must also be notified. So, if an organization discovers a breach and there is a PHI compromise, then no later than 60 days, within 60 days, it has to inform the individuals who are affected. It has to inform the Health and Human Services, the HIPAA office, and in some cases, the media must also be notified regarding the breach. Now that we have understood what HIPAA regulation describes, let's understand who needs to comply with HIPAA. So we have two main categories, starting with the covered entities. Under covered entities, we have healthcare providers, which are any providers of medical or other healthcare services or supplies who transmit any health information about US citizens in electronic form. So these are your doctors, clinics, psychologists, dentists, chiropractors, to name a few. If these healthcare providers are transmitting health information of US citizens in electronic form, then they need to comply with HIPAA. Next, we have health plans. These are individuals or group plans that provide or pay for the cost of a US citizen for their healthcare needs. So you have health insurance companies, you have HMOs, health maintenance organizations, company health plans, Medicare, Medicaid. Medicare and Medicaid, I think these are government-based plans, health plans. So all these health plan companies, they need to comply with HIPAA. Then you have healthcare clearing houses, entities that process non-standard health information that they receive from another entity into a standard format or vice versa. So these include like billing services, repricing companies, and entities processing non-standard health information. So, to give you a clear picture, a healthcare provider might submit a claim in a non standard format, unique to their own system, and then clearing houses will convert this into a standard format. Like ANSI X12 is a format used for healthcare information across US. It's national. It's used nationally for seamless data exchange in healthcare. You can later Google about ANSI X12 in detail to understand what is that standard format for data. So, so these healthcare providers, if they are submitting a claim to these, health clearing houses in a non-standard format, and then these health clearing houses will have to convert that into a standard format, like ANSI X12, then these health clearing houses will also need to be, um, you know, compliant with HIPAA. Then you have business associates. So moving on to the business associates, these are individuals or entities performing functions or activities on behalf of or providing certain services to a covered entity that involves creating, maintaining, receiving, transmitting protected health information. So examples can be laboratories, third party administrators, medical transcription services. You have certain BPOs who convert voice into text for medical transcription services. Way back 16, 17 years ago, I used to work with such a BPO. Then answering services, then IT providers, and consultants. In IT providers, I remember I used to work for a healthcare organization years ago, where our organization was US based. It was involved in manufacturing, in developing these health hospital management and healthcare management softwares. And we used to sell the SaaS version, software as a service version, on our cloud for hospitals. And then so we were storing the information from the hospitals on our cloud. So such interactions with healthcare data, they necessitate the adherence to HIPAA regulations. So, yeah, these are the entities and business associates who need to comply with HIPAA. In case if all this seems complicated and you're working with an organization and you're not sure whether you need HIPAA or you don't need HIPAA, just remember one thing, that if your organization is dealing with data processing related to US citizens and it involves any of the 18 identifiers like name, social security number, email address, etc., that I showed you on the previous slides, then your organization need to be HIPAA compliant. So just remember that much. Let's understand the implementation of HIPAA, how an organization would go about getting compliant for the HIPAA Regulation Act. So to get compliant, an organization would need to establish a data protection management system, or DPMS for short. So, what exactly is a DPMS, a data protection management system? It is a structured framework consisting of these set of processes and practices that an organization can implement to comply with various data protection regulations like HIPAA. So please understand that DPMS is not just for HIPAA. This data protection management system, when an organization establishes it, they need it for getting compliant to various data protection regulations. For example, there's GDPR for European citizen data, there is HIPAA for the US, and then now there is Digital Data Protection Act for India. So, an organization that works globally is a multinational corporation. It will have to adhere to these various data protection regulations. So, the primary goal of a DPMS is to ensure the adherence not just to HIPAA but to various international data protection acts. These acts are very important for the organizations operating globally because uh, you know they necessitate a cohesive DPMS to ensure compliance with the separate sets of regulations pertaining to different countries. So this is critical in shielding the organization from potential penalties and in fortifying its reputation. So with an effective data protection management system in place, organizations can responsibly and securely handle the personal and the health information data, which is in alignment with the various applicable laws and regulations of each country. So, this approach is very pivotal for global organizations to navigate through the landscape of different data protection laws. Like if organization is global, it has offices in India, Brazil, Europe, US, then this multifaceted landscape of data protection laws, to in order to adhere to these various data protection laws and to affirm their commitment to upholding the privacy and security of individuals' information, the organization should have a very effective data protection management system in place. We will understand in detail on the next slide what all components go into building a data protection management system, and how organization implements a data protection management system, which in turn gets it compliant for HIPAA. Now let's talk about Building a data protection management system. So, what all components will go into building a data protection management system within an organization? We will talk about that. On the screen, I am showing you four main components that go into building a data protection management system. There might be many more components that build a data protection management system and run it effectively within an organization, but to give you a general understanding, a general grasp on the concept, I'm going to discuss just about these four components that form a part of DPMS. So, starting with the processes, organizations they should have clear processes defined in order to make sure that the health information is protected. This would include establishing risk assessment processes. So, before initiating any projects, teams must assess how handling the health information could pose risks and then ensure that they have appropriate safeguards in place to mitigate those risks. We will talk a little bit in detail on the next slides how the risk assessment process would go about, how it will actually work in a real life scenario. Then approval processes, organization would need to have certain approval processes in place where if any project that would want to handle or process personal health information due to some reason, then they need to get approval from security and privacy teams to make to before going ahead, before going live. So for the and then audit processes, incident response processes, there should be clear steps if there is an incident response in a security incident or breach. What steps to take in order to respond to such a breach effectively. So we will talk in detail on the next slides with a real life example about the processes. Coming to the second component, compliance and information security teams. So there is a need under the data protection management system to have these different teams and have these different personnels like privacy officer, security risk officer, to be a part of these teams in order to ensure that the organization stays compliant for HIPAA. These teams will be, their responsibility will be to develop and maintain privacy and security policies, conduct security trainings awareness, then carry out compliance checks and audits, also manage security incidents and breaches to ensure that organization is always in line with the HIPAA regulations. And these teams will also include lawyers, because lawyers understand the nuances of HIPAA and other data protection regulations in detail. And there is a saying about lawyers: if you're not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer. So IT personnel, information security person cannot do the job of a lawyer. So it's very important to have lawyers as part of privacy teams, security risk teams, who understand the laws in detail about HIPAA and other data protection regulations. Security awareness trainings is also one of the main component that goes into building the data protection management system. Why I have included this as the main component of DPMS is because from my experience in cybersecurity, I have come to know that you can put all the tools in place, you can put all the technologies in place, but if people are not aware, if humans are not aware about their actions, then all those security controls can fail. With all these new next generation technologies in place for preventing security breaches, we still have a lot of hacks, we still have a lot of attacks. In fact, cyber attacks are increasing day and day. Why? Because 44%, according to the stats, 44% of attacks still happen due to human misconfigurations. Somebody left a port open somewhere, somebody did not follow some process properly, somebody opened a security risk by doing some activity. So that is the reason awareness, security awareness trainings, the importance of this has increased a lot in today's world. So under security awareness trainings, the compliance team should create material that will educate and inform the employees, contractors, and all relevant stakeholders about HIPAA's data protection principles, what HIPAA regulation says, and what is PHI, how to identify, whether information is categorized under PHI or not. So all these kind of security awareness trainings are needed for the employees. The more and more your employees are aware, they will be the first line defenders when it comes to attacks. So they should be highly aware, and these security awareness trainings form an important part of data protection management system, because human is the weakest element in security. Then the fourth component, we will talk about this a little bit in detail on the next slide. What HIPAA compliance software is. So organizations, they should use these specialized softwares, like compliance management software. There are these various vendors, but some of them I remember are OneTrust and HIPAA One. We will not specifically talk about any specific HIPAA One or OneTrust software, but rather talk about what these softwares do, and how they can be used by the organization to handle compliance more effectively and to keep a record of all activities involving personal health information. How compliance management software can help in running this data protection management system effectively. So we will be going a little bit deeper into the compliance management software on the next slide. So now let's delve into the essence of having a compliance management software, why a compliance management software is needed for running an effective data protection management system by an organization. So the intention here is not to promote HIPAA 1 or any specific product, but to emphasize the pivotal role such software plays in overall data protection strategy. So imagine in a healthcare IT organization, we often see a hive of activities, multiple internal projects running concurrently. Think of teams developing hospital management softwares, healthcare management softwares, health clearing houses, or some teams working on innovative healthcare solutions. These projects regularly involve the processing of PHI. So when you have so many projects running with an organization, you need to make sure that the all those projects are compliant with HIPAA rules. Only then your organization overall will be compliant to HIPAA Act. So every project that is running within an organization, it needs to be compliant with HIPAA. Only then overall the organization will be compliant. So without an effective compliance management software like HIPAA 1 or some other similar software, our security and compliance teams who are involved in approving these projects, they would be flooded with manually tracking various projects, scrutinizing assessments filled out by different teams, which is not only time consuming but also prone to inaccuracies and oversights. So with the help of compliance management software such as HIPAA 1, project teams are guided carefully through tailored assessments and questionnaires. It creates actionable compliance plans based on responses, centralizing and managing all the compliance activities, and also pinpointing risks and that exist in some projects if they are maybe processing some special type of PHI like biometric scan, those kind of data. So we will discuss a little bit more in detail through a workflow, through an example in the next few slides, about how the compliance management software solution will help. But then, in a sense, this software is not about preference. It's a necessity for organizations dealing with PHI, because of you know the comprehensive documentation and reporting that we also get. So now let's understand some of the questions, some of the security assessment questions that the projects would get when they enroll for approval. So some questions such as what type of PHI does the project handle? Is there minimum necessary standard being observed? How is the PHI being transferred, stored, and processed within the project? Are any third parties involved? Is the data going to be transferred internationally? It will also have questions focused on individuals' rights and privacy. For example, projects may be asked that if you're collecting or processing PHI, are you informing users in advance of how the data is going to be used? Is there going to be any automated decision making by using this PHI. So this list of question is very short that I'm sharing with you. The actual list is very exhaustive. It's the actual security assessments, risk assessments are they will have a lot of questions in there, and there will be the security risk assessments would also have a lot of questions asking the end users to state what kind of security controls they have put in place, to what kind of administrative safeguards, what kind of technical safeguards, what kind of physical safeguards have been put into place in order to make sure that the PHI data is protected. So the actual list of questions is very long. The security assessments, and there might be 2 3 security assessments, risk assessments that the projects might have to fill out. We will discuss them in detail on the next slides with an example. So let's understand with an example or a workflow to understand how projects, particularly those involving PHI, they navigate through approval process within a typical IT organization. So I want you to imagine an organization with different teams developing various healthcare products, from hospital management software to innovative healthcare solutions, each involving with PHI, each processing PHI. So in this scenario now, a compliance management software like HIPAA 1 or any other software, compliance management software, will become our friend, ensuring that every project aligns with HIPAA compliance rules, maintaining a record of all these projects. So let's walk through a scenario. You are part of a team working on a project that is involving PHI. Now your journey begins when the project is initiated. So you will submit a ticket or an email to the compliance and security teams for approving your project because it involves PHI. Then the privacy and security compliance team, they will enroll your project in this HIPAA 1 compliance management software, and then various risk assessment or security assessments or HIPAA risk assessments are created for your project because it involves PHI. And then you will be sent a link to fill out these assessments, to complete these assessments either via email or a ticketing system. And then you will navigate through these assessments. You will fill out these assessments. These assessments will have questions that will focus on privacy rules, security rules, breach notification rules. I was showing you a sample of a few questions on the previous slide. So you will have to respond to these questions in the privacy rules section. Maybe you will have some questions such as, are you going to inform users or customers whose PHI data you are collecting? How are you going to inform them? Do they have the right to restrict access to their personal health information, right to be forgotten? So all those kind of things will that for all those kind of questions that focus on maintaining the individual's right and freedom to his own PHI, personal health information, those will fall under the privacy rule. Under breach notification rule, you will have some questions in the assessment that will make you aware about what is the breach notification rule for HIPAA. Do you have an incident response process in place in case if the PHI in case if there is a security incident related to PHI? Do you know how the process will work? So, and then security rule of HIPAA, where you will be asked what administrative safeguards, technical safeguards, physical safeguards have you taken into consideration to protect the PHI. So your team will have to fill out these assessments, which will have a lot of questions, and once filled, you will be submitting these assessments in these compliance management software. Privacy and security team, they get notified that your project has filled out this assessment. They will review the assessment, your answers, and then provide feedback if something needs to be corrected, or they will either reject or hold or approve your project. If your project is approved, then it goes live. So that is the journey. So let's take one more example. Suppose your team is developing a new module for a hospital management software that deals with patients' medical histories, a form of PHI. The journey would be the same then: submit the request, fill out the assessment, addressing how the medical histories are accessed, stored, and who has access, and then await feedback and approval from the compliance team. So this example kind of underscores the everyday journey of projects in a healthcare IT environment, and underlining the critical role of compliance management software here in streamlining the compliance posture of each project, ensuring every step is in alignment with HIPAA and mitigating risks effectively before any project goes live. So, as I said earlier, that if an organization has to stay compliant to HIPAA, all the projects that are running internally within that organization, they have to stay compliant to HIPAA. And so the organization would then put all these processes into place under the data protection management system, uh, where it would say that you need to take approval before going live with your project. You would have compliance and information security teams who would conduct these security awareness trainings to educate, inform employees what PHI is, what HIPAA is all about, what these processes are all about, how you need to take approval, who you need to reach out to in case if there is a breach, who you need to reach out to take approval for your project. And then all this activity will be tracked, automated in this HIPAA compliance management software. So I hope then in this video then you have understood how the data protection management system helps the organization to stay compliant with HIPAA, and what HIPAA is overall about. So before we end, I sort of want to leave you with a mind map which will help you remember this session about HIPAA. So we started by discussing the definition and purpose of HIPAA. Then we discussed about PHI definition and what are the identifiers of PHI, like name, social security number, phone number, fax number, all those identifiers that fall under the category of protected health information. Then we discussed about HIPAA regulation overview, what the act says, what is security rule, what is privacy rule, what is breach notification rule, and what HIPAA describes, what kind of security and privacy provisions it describes in this act. We discussed that. Then we discussed who needs to comply to HIPAA. So here I showed you some companies, categories, organizations that need to comply to HIPAA, but as a general rule, I described that if you are working with an organization, you're confused whether you should be HIPAA compliant or no, just remember one thumb rule, that is, if your organization is involved in processing the data of US citizens, and if the data involves the PHI identifiers, the 18 identifiers that we discussed in PHI, like name, social security number, fax number, date of birth, all these kind of details are involved in processing, then you need to comply with HIPAA because it is for US citizens. Then we moved on to understanding what was DPMS, that is Data Protection Management System, how to implement HIPAA via Data Protection Management System, what are the four main components of Data Protection Management System. There are many more components, but we discussed four main components, like organization should have certain approval processes, risk processes, audit processes in place, teams, what kind of teams you would need to run this data protection management system effectively, which will get you compliant to HIPAA. We discussed about the importance of compliance management software, HIPAA 1, not to promote any particular product, but why compliance management software is needed. We discussed that here. We discussed about trainings, what kind of trainings you need to give to your employees, partners, stakeholders who are involved in data processing. We discussed a flow chart. We ended with the flow chart for PHI project approval. We took an example, a typical scene of an IT organization where you have myriad of projects running concurrently, and then as per the processes you need to get it approved, and how a compliance management software will help there. So I hope with this mind map, you will kind of remember this session, and it will help you to understand HIPAA compliance then. All right, thank you. I will see you in the next video.